Can you hear it, George?
Not in there.
Somebody got their phone handy, or can you pull up YouTube?
I've got YouTube up. It's not
Thank you.
showing yet.
That's what I do.
It lags a little bit though.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, there you are. It's got subtitles. Can you hear it?
Can I read them? Hold them way over there by Mr. Meeks, and I'll see if I can read them.
Appears to be working.
It's not working?
Appears to be.
It looks like it's working.
Okay, we're ready,
With-
George.
With audio?
Audio is the key.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, well, we shall begin. Welcome everyone to the March 5th, 2025 regular planning board meeting for the town of Durham. First thing is roll call determination of a quorum. We have all 5 members here. Next thing is the pledge, so we have a quorum. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any amendments to the agenda? Seeing none. Acceptance of the meetings for January 15th and February 5th. Any changes to either one or both of those?
I would move that we accept the January 15th and February 5th meetings as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, please raise a hand to approve. 5-0, it is done. Okay, we're past that. Informational exchange on non-agenda items. Mr. Thabarge.
Just simply the update that we're gonna be talking about the final action of the select board on draft amendments to the land use ordinance. So, an ad was put in the paper today for the March 19th public hearing on the land use ordinance amendments. All of the information is up on the website and the bulletin board, and there'll be copies available for people to check. So we can discuss the details when we get to that item.
Thank you. Anybody else on the town officials want to speak? Residents, you're not a resident, so you can't talk. Now, non-residents.
You can talk.
We're past that. No continuing business. So, new business, completeness review of Ruby Farm View subdivision amendment to add 4 lots, map 5, lot 78-B. Public comment will not be taken. What we're here for is we approved this last spring, I believe, the completeness and the preliminary plat plan. The clock ran out on the validity of that one, so we're just here to take a look at reapproving that, I guess, is that the correct term? Reapproving it. So with that, I guess I will leave. Mr. Thabarge, you want to say anything?
I'll just summarize the application status. As you mentioned, John, this was before the board a year ago, and the board granted a preliminary approval. And one of the issues at that time was the status of the original Ruby Farm View subdivision. The infrastructure had not been completed within 5 years, and the ordinance requires it to be done within 3 years. So the board granted a preliminary approval after getting input from the town attorney, basically conforming it to a phased subdivision, and conditions of approval were included that required completion of phase 1 and verification that those improvements had been done. And then the applicant would get the preliminary approval as well for phase 2. So since that time, as you mentioned, the time limit of 6 months has long expired for submission of the final plan, as I understand it, and you could get input from the applicant's representative here tonight that all of the public improvements for phase 1 have now been completed. So now you're simply looking at the amended plan to add the 4 lots and the road. So The application is complete, and you can take action on that if you feel that's correct. And then I've also provided you with updated preliminary approval conditions, which drop all of the ones related to phase one. So that's kind of where it is, and then if the applicant gets their extended or new preliminary approval, then they would move forward with filing their final plan application.
Okay, Mr. Meek, would you mind just sliding up here and staying, and then state your name, address, and in your case, your company, please?
Good evening, my name is Rick Meek. I'm with Teradyne Consultants, and we're located in New Gloucester.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
I defer to the board, and I think George covered it. We were here, a year ago, got a preliminary approval, and yes, the condition was that the improvements on phase one needed to be complete. So I've included in this application, this reapplication, a statement of completion of construction in accordance with the section 1.1 of the road construction, all in the affirmative that it is complete. So we're looking for preliminary approval on, reapproval on the project.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple, just kind of, I guess, process. One, do we have handy the previous prelim approval that we went through
No.
and approved? Just wondering, what's different? Is there really anything different?
I mean, that is a good question.
I have the conditions of approval from the last meeting, or from last year, somewhere here.
As far as the plan itself is concerned, I did notice that one of the approval conditions was there was a transformer within the buffer on Ruby Farmview Lane, and that has been moved over. Rick, can you alert the board to any additional changes on the plan itself?
Yeah, I think there was one other, maybe. So condition number 2 was the transformer location. 3.
Well, the other additional information that was noted in there was the location of the test pits. So there was some, as I observed going through it, it looked like you had, Rick, addressed some of those approval conditions in your updated application.
Correct, yes, and that is true. So we showed on the original submission, the subdivision plan, we showed well inclusion and septic inclusion zones, but did not show the test pits. So we've created, the registry will not record color, which was on that plan, so I've created a new plan that showed, basically a site plan, that shows the same information, but it includes the test pits now.
Okay.
And then the other thing, somebody mentioned, George or you, that the asphalt and all, the infrastructure work is done on phase one. That was a condition. It had
Correct.
to be done, I think, by end of September or something like that.
And then the only other one, there was a condition about a plan for solid waste, so I included some. So currently the homeowners of Ruby Farm, on their trash pickup day, they put it at the end of Ruby Lane. These new 4 lots would do the same thing. And I think last year there was maybe some concern that the town may be switching to a different pickup.
We can address that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether we'll address it now or not.
Yeah, it's definitely pending, but
It's-
I don't know if we have much to talk about right now with that.
I will before the night's over,
Oh, really?
yes.
Oh, okay.
We're seeking the same 2 waivers that we requested last time. One regarding water system for fire protection. We have a letter from the fire department saying that that's not necessary. And the other one was,
Well, to be clear, the chief said you could use sprinklers.
oh, yes, sorry, yes.
Okay.
Right.
The pond
You
was
just
not
don't need a
necessary.
pond.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Because
correct,
of the
sorry.
sprinkler usage, right.
And the other was a waiver for future access to abutting vacant land, and the reasoning was that the abutting land has access to both Swamp Road and Ruby Farm, Ruby Farm Lane, or,
The section
Is
one.
that the previous one?
yes.
Can I look at that?
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
We didn't approve. the
Yeah,
waivers.
I had intended to include that in the packet. Is that in the packet, the prior conditions
I don't
of
remember
approval?
seeing it.
I know I mentioned it, but I
You-
think I might have neglected to put it in the
You
packet.
put new draft
Right,
conditions.
I don't think I put in the prior one, which was my intent. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. I just think that this could probably help if we look at this, right? Versus like rehashing everything and, you know,
Right.
remembering what we've covered and what we didn't cover, as long as not much has changed, which it sounds like, as far as the design goes,
Correct.
you know.
And, I guess I'm relying, George looked at it, so,
Yeah, you look, there were 3 changes, or 2 or 3 changes listed in that, Juliet,
Mhm.
which are the ones that we, I think, discussed.
The transformers to be moved
Trans-
out of the 50-foot buffer along Ruby Lane. That was done.
Done.
Um, Yeah, the access road was done. Erosion sedimentation controls,
Done to some degree, but to be on the final plan.
final plan, okay. Sewage disposal test pits, done.
That was added to the plan, yes. They were
Yeah.
done previously, they just weren't shown in the plan.
Okay.
And the rest of them are all standard conditions or ones related to phase 1.
Yeah, and or shown on the final site plan, right, like veg clearing areas if needed.
Correct.
Noting the limits of tree clearing on the final site plan, yeah. Okay,
The location of the transformer was moved out of the buffer, but it looks like it's on a property. It's within one of the lots.
Yes, that's typical, and they would just get an easement for, CMP would have an easement for that location to replace or service the transformer, so yes.
Okay. The application also said that the project will be completed in this year.
That's Mike's intent, yes.
All the houses constructed?
No.
Just the infrastructure?
Infrastructure
Okay.
and the lot's ready for sale.
Okay.
anything else? If not, I will accept.
Oh, the one, it is on here, it's the last item, it's the applicant shall submit a plan for solid waste disposal.
Which
With the
you
final
did.
plan. The plan is to continue to bring out containers from 13 homes that are in there right now, and we're going to be increasing that by another, potential of increasing that by another 4. And the current solid waste agreement with Pine Tree Waste, also known as Casella, they are suggesting that it's in the existing contract. It says upon transition, they will be providing 2 residential containers per household. In the presentation, which they provided to the town, to the selectmen, could be a year ago, was these were going to be 64-gallon containers, and they had to be 3 feet apart in order for that automated arm to grasp that container and dump it into the hauler. My concern is, even with 13, that's a considerable amount of space that has to be allocated to put those containers. And I was hoping that once the road was paved, that there would have been a section there that certainly would have allowed for those containers to be put there versus putting them at the end of the road. And is Casella going to back in there? I have not witnessed any containers out there, and is it a safety issue if they're not driving in? Casella has specifically said within their contract that they would go on town roads and also any subdivision roads. So, I'm still concerned about that.
That they would or would not go on those?
They would, if allowed to, and I don't know why they wouldn't be allowed to, because we're building, the town of Durham builds the roads the same way as we require developers to build their roads. So,
So right now, the lots are pulling their bins in front of their house or at the very end of the road?
bring it to the
Very end of
end.
the road. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, it's a really good point. Like, how is that going right now with that many trash?
I
Well,
can't answer that
It
question.
is, I think, a simple solution is that, I checked with the town manager. Casella, as long as Casella said the road is drivable, navigable, they will go into, and they can turn around, they will go into a subdivision. So my recommendation is that we either make it a condition of approval that you change your, I don't know what your HOA says, but you have people put it at the end of their driveway, which to me is a whole hell of a lot more, you know,
I think everybody likes
happy
that better as
days for the
well.
homeowners. And they will in fact go in there. Now, you might wanna check with, whoever your contractor is. I don't know if you're using Casella or if you've got.
That's who, the contractor.
I'm
Casella,
just the neighbor to
Oh.
the development, so all their stuff is.
You gotta, if you wanna speak, you gotta come up here. We,
I can, I don't know if that one turns on or not.
yeah,
have
well,
a
that's
seat.
good.
Name, street, and.
My name's John Faith, I'm at 254 Swamp Road, so we are the property abutter right beside Ruby Lane's whole development. So when they bring their trash and recycles out, it's right on the corner. And some of the debris blows over on my corner of the property, but most of the time it's all picked up at the end, but there was 13 residents worth of cans and boxes out there, so. As a former trash guy, I tried out one of those arms, and it's only on the right side, so they'd have to pull in if they keep them up at the end. And then you'd probably have to try to back out on the Swamp Road, which is, it's posted at 45, but everybody goes by there at like 60 with the BIW traffic, so.
Well, I go back to my, hopefully,
Hopefully, yeah, they'll be able to.
hopefully easy
go in.
issues if we change the HOA. And I can't imagine a homeowner complaining because, you know, if you're way in the back there, you gotta somehow get it all the way out to Swamp Road. So,
Cause they're packing it in all their vehicles or on four-wheeler trailers and
Yeah.
bringing it all out Thursday night or Friday morning.
I gotta drive to the bottom of my hill. So if we want to, it's kind of up to the board. Like, we can say that we'd like to see something in the HOA agreements or come back to us and say that's what you're gonna do.
I like that idea. I just wonder what jurisdiction the applicant has regarding this. I mean, perhaps for the 4 that we're looking at right now, but what about the other, the older?
Well, anytime a subdivision is brought before this board, we have the ability to review it as if it was the initial application. We can go back and look at everything all over again.
Okay.
So, basically what I'm saying, if you're saying this only applies to the 4, I don't agree with that. It applies to the potential of the 17.
Yeah, it's certainly worth, because there's liable to be somebody who says, no, I'd rather drag it 2,000 feet.
Yeah, I don't know anyone who would
To
do
do
that.
that.
They would prefer, I guess I'm just saying, are we talking to the right person? Do we need to add someone else to this conversation? Sorry.
Commercial break.
Once the interruption is old school.
I am so very sorry, guys.
I did that once too. Okay, so my thought is, I don't know, do we need to make this a condition of approval?
Well,
Or
it
how do we-
currently, it was a condition of approval, and I'm gonna check to see if it's on the draft. It was not, so we could add that back on as a condition number 9. Basically, restore the waste, the requirement for a waste management plan. And as far as the jurisdiction of the board to talk about phase 1, at this point, They had asked for an amendment, but I think you've withdrawn that because that's completed now. So I think they're only applying right now for phase 2, which is the 4 lots. So I believe if you checked with the town attorney, what you'd find is you can withhold or deny the 4 new lots, but I don't think you can go back and legally enforce moving the containers of the existing homeowners unless there was a condition of approval on the original plan, which I don't think there was. But you could say, we're not gonna add to the problem by approving 4 more lots unless you come up with a solution that fixes this for the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm getting to is, and again, I don't think there's no cost to the homeowners, there's no cost to the developer, that you just work it out with Casella if we make this, condition of final approval, that should solve
Is
the.
Casella picking it up now?
Yes.
Yep.
So it could be as simple as calling them and saying, are you willing to go up the road and
They-
pick up the bins?
I think that's, you
Would
know,
they
their contract allows them to do that. I don't think anybody's ever asked, because they do go up private roads. They go up Bowie Hill.
Right.
But I think, and I asked Bowie Hill at some point when I was in there, that's because they asked them to do it. And so I guess what I'm saying is sort something out. If, as a minimum, you gotta do it for the 4 new ones. But as soon as you do it make their lives easier, the other 13 are gonna be complaining, so, and you guys probably still control the HOA.
If there's even one, has even one been established in HOA?
Yes, yeah, and these 4 lots are gonna be part of that HOA, so that's.
I would say when you amend
At
it,
least in my mind, it's an easy ask or fix, so.
I mean, if I was a homeowner over there, I'm being taxed like anybody else in town. And my tax bill includes pickup of trash at the curb. And the curb is at the end of my driveway, not at the end of the road that I happen to live on. So I would certainly, I think we're setting up a precedent here if we don't address it. And I certainly don't want it to become a safety issue either. If you're having somebody backing out versus pulling in, if they're pulling in and have to turn around, they're gonna have to go all the way down to the hammerhead and turn around. So why not be picking up trash at each individual homeowner's driveway?
I mean, I think we're kind of talking about something we think is easy. We're not gonna solve it tonight or know the final answer, so we can kind of leave that condition or add, or I guess re-add it to sort it out, and if who's ever, Mr. Kopp or you, or who's ever managing the HOA at this point, could go in there and just say, and I don't know if it's, I don't know or care if it's the town that's picking up the garbage, or, you know, you've got a private contractor, you've got a private contract with Casella to go in there, that's the homeowners and the developer.
Okay.
So does that make sense? Mr. Tabarz, is that?
Yes, yep, and so that would be adding condition number 9 to the draft.
Good,
Okay.
thank you.
So basically, it's the same, they have to come in with a waste management plan.
Which I guess if you really just wanna spend more money, you could build a big pad and work that out, but
Well, then, if you went that way, you still have to worry, you have to be concerned about where is that, if the vehicle pulls in, where are they gonna turn around?
yeah, I think the
can't
simple
be
answer
backing.
is go pick it up at each homeowner's driveway and sort that out. And that's, we'd going forward in subdivisions, that's something we require. But I think I said, I know they do Bowie Hill because I've been past it on a Thursday. I drive past it tomorrow.
And this is just a preliminary approval.
Yep, so by the final approval, we'll do that.
George, if you would, I'd like confirmation as to the ability of the board to review things once a revision comes in on a subdivision, whether we can look at everything, or is it just?
Can you put conditions on phase 1?
Correct.
Well, we're not reviewing, just add on to his question, we're not technically reviewing phase 1, correct? Am I missing something? We put conditions on phase 1 before we went to phase 2, but we're not necessarily relooking their plan or, I mean, that's a clarification question.
Right, it just, right.
That's, I mean, that's.
I'm not suggesting that we do any of that, but I'm just wondering whether it is an option.
Okay, I think we beat garbage. Yeah, I mean, you got the mission, right? Slide back up there, Mr. Meeks, and say yes, please, that you will.
Yes, I heard you clearly.
Okay, that will be a condition. Okay, anything else? We'll go away, we got, I guess, another part two. If not, I would accept a motion.
For what?
We have to,
So there's two parts to this. First is complete application, and then second is a reinstatement of the preliminary approval.
so make a motion that in fact it is a complete application.
Second.
Did somebody make a motion? I'll make a motion that it's
I thought
complete.
you were making a motion.
No,
I was seconding your motion.
All right,
I thought that was
I
perfectly.
forget things. Okay, so moved and seconded. Are there any further discussion? Seeing none, please raise a hand if you approve substantial completion. 1, 2, 3, 4. And since your hand is up, Juliet, with holding the plans, I'm counting that as approval. Okay, the next thing is, completing what's reviewed is done. Substantive review of Ruby Farm subdivision amendment to add 4 lots, map 5, lot 78B. Public comment will not be taken. So, Mr. Thabar, let's kind of follow that same process. Mr. Thabar, if you.
Well, I think we've pretty much gotten all the issues out on the table in terms of the substantive issues of the project.
Okay,
Can I just pause for a second? I just want to make sure I'm following what we're doing here. Did we just approve prelim?
No.
no,
We just
substantive
determined that
completion.
they've
Okay,
submitted
so
a
we just
complete
approved the
application.
completion, so
Yeah.
we're
Complete
still on the
application.
prelim approval
Yes.
stage, okay.
What George is saying is we've covered all the, covered everything, so I will, does anybody want to ask questions or comments? Are you saying? If not, I will accept a motion to approve the preliminary plan for Ruby,
Farmview.
what is the real name to that thing?
Ruby Farm View.
Ruby Farm View subdivision.
Are you making
Is
that
this
a
when we
motion?
talk about conditions, right? Do we have to read the
You
conditions?
can get the motion on the table and then talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay, then I agree, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, further discussion. And we do have the original conditions. And is this where we want to add the garbage thing, or we've already done that?
You would have to add it right now.
Okay, I will, well, when we get to the motion, I will say that we should include language.
So if
about-
anybody's looking for it, the draft conditions, I believe, are on
Please do.
page 119 and 120 of the packet.
Okay,
And is it just copy paste from last time?
It's deleting the ones that have been completed, right? So just, I'll walk you down through them. I'm assuming you're gonna have a peer review on the engineering plans and the cost estimates for construction. They've got 6 months from this approval to get the final plan in. You mentioned, Juliet, the vegetation clearing to be shown in the final plan. The applicant has to submit the approved street name for the extension. And then they have to note on the plan limits of clearing for the individual lot owner's attention. And then they have to get the engineer's cost estimate for the infrastructure that's proposed for this phase. And again, that would be peer reviewed and provide a proposed performance guarantee for completion of those improvements. And then that has to be either in the form of the town attorney's template for an irrevocable letter of credit or a cash deposit. In the past, they used bonds, and if they're gonna do that, then whatever they're proposing has to be reviewed by the town attorney at their expense. Or they could do a conditional agreement, which would say no lot sales or building permits until all the infrastructure is completed, like you did on Deer Creek Crossing. And now you're proposing, or at least have been discussing, adding a 9th one, which is reiteration of the need for a waste management plan.
Do we need to include the waiver, or has that kind of already been?
Yeah, you would,
The water,
you could either do it now or when they come back, so
okay.
you had gone through the process with reviewing the criteria and the facts for that.
So I
There's,
have,
sorry, there's 2 waivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like clarification on the request for a waiver of the requirement to provide for future street interconnection with adjacent parcels. Is that an indication that there may be an additional phase?
No, the requirement is to provide connection to abutting properties that may be developed in the future. What we're saying is we want a waiver from that requirement because the abutting property has frontage on Ruby Lane and Swamp Road.
That is a requirement of the town and other towns that I've worked for. The idea is to get away from every street in town is a dead end. So most plans, most subdivision regulations require, and you actually required that on Deer Creek Crossing. So there's an extension of right-of-way off the end of theirs to connect to the large parcel that goes back out to Hollowell Road and I think even over to Stackpole. What would that be, Davis Road? Davis Road. Yeah, so that's just long-term planning and not ending up with everything in town, new development being a dead end. So that's a requirement of the town that they're asking a waiver from.
Thank you.
We
And I
talked
think that-
about this before.
And I think the difference on Deer Creek was there was no other,
Access.
access to the back.
Or this does not provide for the interconnection opportunities that one did potentially.
Yeah, well, they do have a connection into, if I'm understanding it correctly, the budding property, there is a connection off of Farm View Lane. Did I understand that correctly?
The Ruby Farm View.
Potential access.
Yes, when Ruby Farm View comes in off of Swamp Road, it's paralleling that side property line. So by position, the abutter has access to Ruby Lane.
No, because unless you give them an easement. Have you given them an easement?
Here, you can show
They have
them.
frontage on that road, so.
Is it this property right here? This one? Okay, I wanna point
Maybe
that
I'm thinking of
So
something.
this property
It's lot
here is
79.
what we're
out. Oh, okay.
required to
So yeah,
connect?
see, they're here, right?
Yes.
That's what you're talking about, and here.
Yes.
So they abut it, yeah.
But you have to give them, in this case, probably the HOA has to give them access. If you have a 10-foot strip owned by Ruby Farm View,
There's no 10-foot strip.
let me ask this, is there legal access from whatever that property is to, excuse me, Ruby Farm View?
I guess that would be an attorney's question, but to me, the way this was developed, they have frontage on Ruby Lane now.
But I guess I'd like, probably not the place to discuss it tonight, let's postpone that discussion, but I would like to know that they have the legal right to connect to Ruby Farm View. Easement, whatever it may be, because sure as I'm sitting here, 10 years from now,
Right.
some homeowner of Ruby Farm View will say, be glad to give you that, give me $100,000.
Right.
Been there, received that notice, so.
And the other issue is the separation between that road. Well, if it came in onto Ruby Lane, that would be all right, but if it came out onto Swamp Road, those two right beside each other would not be a workable.
That is also a good point. So I guess I'd like to, Mr. Meeks, I'd like to confirm that we're not, I hear what you're saying, it would be nice, but
Show how that property would be developed. without
legally,
this access.
legally. I mean, if everybody else agrees, but I think even if it's only a foot or two, that could be a very expensive foot,
Yeah.
if at all.
I have a question for the abutter that's here.
No,
No?
because, no offense, but he could be dead before this ever becomes a real issue. Although he doesn't look like he's dying, but
So John, the question to the applicant is to confirm that the adjacent landowner has access to Ruby Farm and to swamp, or just?
I would say that George has a good point, that there is in fact access from either or and
Show that the
or
abutting property can have access
Yes.
without using this
to one
road.
of those two.
Without using this road.
Yep, and so that's probably a question for the swamp as a town road, so the road commissioner and, the developer, I mean, he may still own that, in which case it's a simple create an easement kind of deal, but that'll work. So I guess at this point, you know, we need to discuss it further, next time. And I guess we'll do both waivers. I'm fine if we wanna go ahead and approve the waiver on the fire or, the sprinklers. But probably both of them can wait till next time. In agreement, I wanna do one of two, 50-50, get 50% done?
Let's go
I think we
50-50.
should include the waivers in here.
Well, the way, you could hold off on re-granting the waivers until the final plan. Cause you're gonna
So the
ask.
waivers have expired, if they
The
would.
waivers have expired.
So,
Okay.
so I'm fine, do we wanna go ahead and approve fire tonight, or at least disapprove it, vote on it?
Sure.
Okay. Then, given that the fire chief is fine with the use of sprinklers in lieu of a pond, I will make a motion that we approve. Do we have that verbiage for the waiver handy, George? I don't think I printed that
Yeah,
out.
we can just summarize it as the waiver of
Yeah, it's
the
right here.
requirement for an on-site water protection.
Okay, yeah, okay. My motion is that we waive the requirement for an on-site water source for protection because of the use of sprinklers.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Seeing none, please raise a hand to approve. 5-0. So if we could, on that road thing, I was burned because somebody thought we could do something long ago, and I just don't wanna have, you know, get that contest down the road going, so.
Understood.
And if it's your land, I'm not saying you should charge them $100,000, but, okay, so I've lost track of where we are, so I need a motion
on the
to,
reinstatement of the preliminary approval.
I will make a motion that we approve the reinstatement of the preliminary plan with, the, conditions of approval that have been provided, plus number 9, which would be, for them to come up with a, solid waste plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? Seeing none, please raise a hand to approve. 5-0.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for resubmitting everything, by the way. That's very helpful. Expensive, but helpful. Do you, I'm not pinning you down, do you have time when you might come back in? Are you close to final plan?
Well, we certainly need to submit to peer review, get and respond to any of their comments, so that'll be the pending question, I guess.
Go ahead and get all your DEP,
And our-
I mean, you're ahead of the power curve in a lot of that stuff. About fish and
Yes,
wildlife and all, so you've got a good jump on it. Okay,
so.
Thank you.
So we'll be back when we can be
we'll
back.
see you when you get back.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming in. You wanna stay and learn about land use articles? If not, you get home and beverage of your choice and watch it on television. So 19 March, 6:30 right here, we're gonna have a public hearing on it.
Okay, yeah.
And
Because
the-
the mailer I got didn't, I don't remember if it said there was public comment or not, so I didn't.
there is, a public hearing will
For the
be
next one, right?
for the land use articles, make sure that we're on the same wavelength with everybody, yeah.
Because I was just gonna worry about the stream coming out and how they're gonna do their leach fields and all that stuff. Because on that,
Oh,
The
you're
next
talking about
one.
for the, I'm sorry, we're talking about two different things.
yeah, for that 4 that's going along the edge of my property, I got a stream that comes right out of there, so I'm just wondering how they're gonna do the.
Well, we haven't really decided if we're gonna do a public hearing or not for the final plan. looking
And
around.
just food for thought, I was just wondering how, where I would bring that up, or if they were gonna cover it.
I don't know why we wouldn't, but
Well, get a crowd like this, Ken, it'll take forever.
Be helpful to send written comments.
Yeah, please do that, and then,
Then we can-
you know, reach out to us and say, you know, because you'll be able to see the plan, and, you know, just, if you want to do that, or we can have a public hearing if we want. It is 6-1 for the 4 lots. Normally I would say no, but since he's here,
Yeah, no, just because, you know, like across the river, the road, I should say, we got that property that was gonna be ball fields, but there's all those vernal pools. But yet we got this wetland and the peat moss bog that he's wrapping around on both sides, so.
here's what I would tell you to do, and it may solve your problem, is talk to Mr. Meeks or, I think Mr. Kopp is the developer.
Yeah.
Because they've done the vernal pool search, they've done
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah,
wetlands, and they may be able to answer your
Oh, sure.
questions, save you.
And those
tripping.
plans are on the website for
Okay.
tonight's
Yeah.
meeting,
Okay, sure.
and you can see all the
Oh,
wetland
yeah, yeah,
mapping.
And you, either way, you know, if you still have questions, or, show up and we'll probably let you talk.
Sure thing. So the 13th or?
No,
When did you say the date was?
this will come back before us the first Wednesday in April, which is,
Oh, okay.
anybody know that, whatever the first Wednesday in April is. The
All right.
19th is, land use articles, that'll go before the town
Oh, yeah.
meeting.
All right. Thanks for you guys.
Thanks for
yeah,
coming.
thank you.
Are you a fireman, or do you?
Yeah, someday.
I would just wanna make sure that you don't steal a fire engine, I don't
Steal the fire
I wanna see the fire engine driving out the door.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm killing time here. So, the next thing on the agenda, I believe, is the land use articles. And the reason I asked George to put this on tonight's agenda was to kind of do a quick review and catch us up, because we haven't, it's probably been a month or so. We now have the final select board approved things. So at the end of the day, there's really we can't make any changes. I mean, they're now the final draft. But I wanted us to be familiar with it, because on the 19th of March at 6:30 PM here at the fire station, for those who are listening, we will have a public hearing, then we can answer. So ask some of the questions and be prepared to answer them at that point. And I think this came down to the wire. George attended the meeting last night, and at least on historical, they were still discussing potential changes as late as last evening, but I think we're done. And so, George, if you want to give just a quick history of, I guess the biggest thing is now there's 3 articles: resource protection, historical commission changes, and they combine contract zoning and BES. Remember, we had a discussion about what happens if BES fails and contract zoning passes, or vice versa. And so they combine them into one article. 2 different sections of the land use ordinance, but one, if one fails, they both fail. Or actually, it's just one vote that fails. Okay, so did you have a question?
I'm curious if anyone can speak to why they're combined.
Mr. Thabarge has been talking to the lawyer. I mean, my guess is because they think that solves the whole issue of one passes, one fails.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same deal that we went down on the resource protection. Originally proposed to put it into 2 separate ones, have separate votes for whatever reasons, and then the decision was made to combine them. And that's the same thing that's happened here. So it's going to be an up or down vote, so that you don't end up with, and there's arguments both ways,
And so,
that you don't end up with best standards without contract zoning and vice versa.
if it fails, what happens to an application?
So if it fails, then the current status, which is that the town attorney's opinion is that it is a permitted use in the rural residential and agricultural district. So virtually anywhere along the power lines outside of the resource protection district, they could come before you with simply a site plan application, and there are no standards to deal with any of the BES issues.
So that would be our argument to pass it.
Yeah, well, that's a great argument, but
I can see both ways. Yes, it's our argument to pass it, but
So
a
it's a-
reason to not combine them too,
I know.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't like it.
To combine them?
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
And you will recall, we had started out since last year, just to, revisit how we got here. We started out with the select board giving direction to the Conservation Commission, the Historic District Commission, the Planning Board, and you were tasked with coming up with the best standards, which we came to the conclusion last August that this is just something the town really needs to take its time and make sure it gets it right. So you went to the select board, recommended a moratorium, and then that be the issue that was put on this town meeting ballot, which was a moratorium. That was back in August. Around September, October, the town attorney convinced the select board, given the potential exposure of the town, to do the moratorium as a special town meeting. That happened on November 19th. And at that point, the select board asked the town attorney to draft the contract zoning and asked the planning board to do the best standards. So we were on track with two separate. And that's how we prepared them, that's how we treated them. And the town attorney, her opinion was it's better to combine them for a number of reasons. And the select board agreed with that position, and that's where they ended up.
but I think George mentioned it. We do have the moratorium, and the moratorium, I haven't counted, but it probably, the original one expires in April, I guess. I count 6 months from November. But then the select board has the ability to extend it another 6 months.
Yeah,
So we have basically until November of next year to come up with, if it fails, and hopefully it doesn't, we still have time to redo it. We'll be able to take the town's comments and say, whatever it may be, that.
yeah, if it
and
fails
change-
because of contract zoning, then you could have a special town meeting and just propose the best standards.
Yes.
And the moratorium will still be in effect because the moratorium stays in effect until one of two things happens. 6 months expire without select board extension, or the town adopts standards.
and if this passes, the standards are included.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So if
It's
it
a good
fails,
question, that will probably come up, so.
your first question, if it fails, a best developer couldn't just come in the next day
No.
and submit an application. We're still under a moratorium.
Correct.
All right.
We just,
Yeah, so the other changes, there were some substantive changes to the drafts. For the solar, remember that the planning board ended up after taking input from the Conservation Commission of what level of scale for solar farms would be included in the contract zoning requirement. The planning board ended up at 10, and the select board increased that to 20 as part of their final change.
they actually use square feet, right?
Yeah, it's the translation of 400,000 square feet of panels, which translates into about 20 acres of actual development area. The planning board had been at 175,000 square feet of panels, which translates into about 10 acres of development.
Remember the figure that we were looking at? It kind of had like.
Yep, way back.
Do we have that?
No, because after we went through that with the whole thing on solar, we came to the conclusion of, because you have to figure out, is it this way, is it this way? Just measure the surface area of the panels, it's simple, it's easy, and that's what we've been using, and the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and the Select Board stuck with that to say, the standard is not 20 acres, the standard is not 10 acres, the standard is 400,000 square feet of surface area of the solar panels.
But 400,000 square feet is how many acres?
It's about 5 acres, between 4 and 5 acres of actual panels.
But really what you're saying, how do I say this?
It's about 40 acres, right? It's at 400,000 square feet would be about 40 acres of land.
10.
I'm not talking about all the buffers and all.
No. 400,000 square feet is about was it, it's 43, it's 10 acres?
Per acre, right?
Yeah, it's just under 10 acres.
Yeah, okay.
It's
Oh,
just under
panel.
10.
Oh,
Panels,
panel.
the panels.
But,
right.
is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
trying to understand this, in here it says 20 acres, in your
Well, is that the
notes.
summary? That's the
Yeah,
notes.
in your
That's
notes.
the notes.
Okay.
That's right. It's just so that everybody
So what's
can-
it gonna say? What's the ordinance saying?
It's in the packet.
Okay, so,
Yeah, the final drafts are in your packet.
Can I just point out that there's a typo on that on page 133 of the packet? It says
The draft
400
amendments?
Yeah, it says 400,000 here, but then in text it says 175 still.
This one, thank you for
Yeah,
catching.
It's on number 3 and number 4.
We can make those kinds of changes.
Yes,
Good
typos
catch,
are
thank you.
okay. Let's see.
okay, and actually, sorry, not to change things, but also in this contract zoning thing, is the solar split out?
No,
So that's in it too.
yeah.
Yeah,
So if this fails,
if this fails, the ability to use contract zoning
Where did you see 175?
fail.
the size of solar projects,
It doesn't, we continue with the existing, standards. The only thing this does for solar, as it says,
Yeah,
I don't wanna quote it, it says for solar, well, we talked about 400,000 square feet. So if this goes away, there is no, the categories that were created earlier stay. The only thing that changes here is what you have to, where you have to go to the contract. If it's this size, you have to go through contract zoning. 400,000 square feet.
so we're saying 400,000 square feet of solar panel surface area is the max
without a
Without-
town meeting vote.
without
Without
contract
contract
zoning.
zoning.
And so that's really like less than 10 acres of solar panels, just the solar panels.
Correct.
So really, that could be more than 20 acres total. Like, I know we're talking about 20 acres, but that is a very like fluid thing.
Right. That's why
That's
we
very,
went
like-
with that's why we
so-
went with that.
Okay, so
number.
400,000 square feet. So when a developer comes in, they're going to have to explain to us, show us how many square feet of panels they have.
Right.
We'll have to certify that in their plans.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, thank you.
And just to kind of review, very quickly, and George, you might want to do that. If it's 400,000 or greater, goes to contract zoning, and there is a process for that.
Yep.
You know, it's a zoning, it's gonna be the select board and the planning board. And our role in it is pretty limited to, it does or does not match the comp plan. I mean, we could comment about, we don't like that, we don't like where it is and whatever. but
You
the select
could,
board-
actually, you can make a recommendation for, to modify, or against,
But I thought that was based solely on the comp plan.
based on the comprehensive plan. You
Yes,
can- you
okay,
can make
thank
that.
I think we'll probably have to have a meeting when it comes to this.
Oh,
If
yeah.
it comes to this, on like
Oh, yeah.
process. But one more question about the solar panel surface area again. Is this flat, like,
Yeah, if you lay them on the ground,
So-
measure the surface area.
so it's
that's-
not, because in the field, they're
No.
not like this, they're like this.
You measure them flat on the ground.
So it's gonna be, okay. Got it, thank you.
Okay, so there was another change that they inserted, and that was, you remember the discussion about changing the standards in the BES through contract zoning? So the board, the select board reviewed that whole issue of should you allow a reduction in the standards? And you remember you had quite a discussion about that. So for example, one of the companies that gave comments raised the issue of they're not sure you can do a BES and meet 55, 45 decibels day and night standard. So the select board, after reviewing that whole issue, came out with, given that any BES over that size is gonna have to go to a town meeting vote, the standards will apply for anything under that, without question. But the question is, should the town meeting vote be able to go higher than the 55, 45? And the select board ended up with saying, yes, if it's approved as a contract zone provision, and that is, they asked for that to be specified in the best standards, which that is the other change. from
So
what
where
we
is that?
saw.
Can you point us to that?
Yep. So that is on page 136 of your packet.
5.8.5,
Yep, see that phrase that's highlighted, unless otherwise specified in a contract zoning agreement. They wanted that language in there, just to clarify how that.
so what this means is that the standards fit for, what is our size for storage again?
This is for tier 3, which is
Yeah.
anything over one of those shipping containers, which is 1 megawatt.
We're saying 1 megawatt?
1 megawatt or greater. Over, excuse me, I think it's over.
It's greater than.
Greater
one
than
megawatt.
Greater than
It's on the
one.
table of
More than
language.
one shipping container. So if you had one shipping container, which like say some high-tech, small, like the sawmill, they wanted to have a 1 megawatt for whatever reason, they add some new technology and they're doing things in there. They could add one of these and they'd go through site plan review and you'd treat it like you did the outside generator.
Okay,
Uh,
so
yeah.
anything greater than 1 megawatt hour, anything under that, our standards apply.
Yep.
Anything over that,
Town
the
meeting vote.
standards
Town meeting vote,
can be changed.
and this, you start with these standards.
Mhm.
But you can,
But they're
depending on
not-
where it is, that sound going from 55 to 65 during the day, 55 at night, if there's nobody within a quarter mile, that may be acceptable. And you'd write that into the contract zone. Or you might require them to have sound mitigation on one side of the project, where one side's facing the power line, the other side's facing a neighborhood through the woods, and you could make them put the sound barrier on one side, but not all sides.
Okay,
You'll have that flexibility with this language, but it specifies that can only happen through a contract zoning agreement.
Hey, George, are we gonna take the notes out?
Well, we're gonna leave the notes in for the public process of going up to the public hearing. But for the actual warrant articles, we're gonna take all those notes out
Right.
for what gets attached to the warrant articles.
So I think we ought to start our meeting the public hearing and say, the notes will not be on the final warrant, so somebody doesn't say, hey, where's the note? I wanna, I looked, when I saw it, just, it can be there for the public hearing.
Yeah.
But we ought to tell them that's not gonna be on the final, and you've bolded them and.
The only thing the town attorney says, make sure that whatever gets attached to the town meeting warrant that gets voted on doesn't have those notes on it,
Right.
Yeah,
so that they don't become part of the ordinance.
and I think we just ought to tell people that's gonna,
There for clarification for them during the
Yeah.
public hearing.
any other comments or questions on, this process?
Yes.
Let's stick with contract zoning at this point. Anything else on contract zoning?
yes.
So can we,
Okay.
we can, go ahead.
No, you go, Peter, Brian.
We can change some text. There's just a section in here that talks about notifying the public drinking water supplier.
Mhm.
There's no public
Yeah,
water.
there actually are. There's the school district.
Oh,
Everything within, I can't remember if it's a quarter mile or 2,000 feet. Any development, well, when Deer Creek Crossing came in, they had to notify the school district. So, yeah.
okay.
And I'm not sure we can make those kinds of changes.
Okay.
I mean, I think there's probably a line,
Yeah.
correcting mistakes,
Yeah,
like.
typo is one thing, but.
Yeah,
some things are
175,000, but the verbiage, we may not be able to change.
No, I didn't know that about public water. I wouldn't have brought it up.
That's a good
And then
question.
getting back to the noise section, you listed it's 5.20.
Mhm.
Will that, right now it's 5.19. So will it change if this passes to
Yes.
5.20?
And it says right in there, it'll
Okay.
change.
All right.
Yep.
So what was the sentiment of the other town boards and committees last night? Like Conservation Commission?
I'm not even gonna answer that, because I'm not happy with what they did, but George may take a shot at it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that the Conservation Commission was not aware of the fact that a week ago, the select board took their input and changed the proposed threshold for contract zoning requirement for solar farms, which had been, and they came into the planning board and said, it's not fair to put this on solar farms when you don't do it on gravel pits, and at the very least, allow it at 20 acres. And so the select board reviewed that a week ago Tuesday and came to the conclusion, and they voted unanimously to increase it from 10 acres or 175,000 square feet of panels to 400,000. It was pretty apparent last night that the Conservation Commission was not aware that they had done that, and so they came in and asked complete removal of solar farms from the contract zoning requirement. But the select board heard their arguments and made the case that, look, a 600-acre solar farm would have as much, concern for the town as a 15-acre battery energy storage system. So, and part of the Conservation Commission argument was there were other ways to address that issue. And they were concerned that this is gonna be a discouragement for solar farms, period. And that, they had been doing an analysis, they talked about Topson's fee mitigation system to discourage it in certain areas, encourage it in others. And Joe Roy of the select board basically said, look, we can continue that review, but at this point in time, until something like that is put into place, the contract zoning will protect the town against a mega solar farm coming in, and all we have is the performance standards. So there were arguments on both sides. They also pointed to the fairly robust buffering standards that we've put in, but the select board came out pretty much in unanimity to keep it in there, but raise it to 20 acres.
Okay, and can you remind me if, it is decided to continue working on the siting of solar, larger scale, it can't be pulled out, can it?
Sure.
Oh, it can from
Sure.
contract zoning?
Well, you could amend the ordinance.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Whenever they come up with the alternative, you
Yeah.
could pull that out of the contract zoning requirement.
Okay, so if it is decided to keep working on siting for whatever it is, it can be amended.
Yeah, and the other
in the
thing is the
future.
planning board, some of the planning board members had talked about, well, should we be applying this to other major forms of development, like huge subdivisions or very large commercial projects?
Yeah, I knew you could add things. I thought that for some
Yeah.
reason you couldn't.
Well, I would caution, and this is not tonight's or this year's discussion, but contract zoning is more than just kind of controlling the development. There are things to be gotten out of contract zoning. And so if you're talking about a very large solar project or a Walmart warehouse or whatever it may be, our ordinance doesn't, and the planning board doesn't have a mechanism to say, what, I guess for lack of a better term, what are you gonna do for us? I mean, what are you
How will
bringing in
How will
here?
this benefit the town?
Yes, thank you, better way to say it. So I would not recommend giving that up because it's a heck of a tool to help with the tax base.
So if it fails, we keep a moratorium on BES, but any solar projects could move forward without that tool.
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong, but yes.
Yep.
So what it does is it makes us liable in my mind for the 600 acre or 500 acre green project, which that town had the ability to turn it down. We don't have that. So, I mean, they came in with a proposal for 500 acres and, because I think it was a rezone. I mean, I think they had to do a rezone. We don't have that. So if somebody comes in with a 500 acre solar or 500 acre Walmart warehouse, our ability to say no is fairly limited, which contract zoning gives us kind of an unlimited ability to say no, which we don't want 600 acres.
Yeah.
Or we don't want it here, or whatever it's gonna be. So,
Okay.
I'll be honest, contract zoning changed my mind completely about this, because I think it gives us more control over it, and certainly the financial piece of it. I'm sorry, that's my soapbox on that one. Anybody else have anything on contract zoning?
I just don't like that we're combining them. I'm just gonna voice that.
Yeah, I guess it's too late now. But I think the good news is, if they say no, we have the ability to, because they don't like contract zoning or because they don't like the best standards, we do have the ability to go back and separate them.
And that was a big factor in the select board's final decision.
But it would
That
wait,
fallback protection.
it would wait another year.
No, The
You'd have to have
They would have to,
special
they would have to extend the moratorium, and you could do a special town meeting to come up with Plan B.
Yeah, I would certainly, given that there may be somebody who's interested, if it fails, I would certainly be one who pushes, whatever it failed for. If it failed for contract zoning, but the argument, that the best standards were relatively well received, I would certainly try to institute or get the town to vote for that. I'm the ultimate pessimist, but I would hope that we can convince the town, the select board, everybody else can, and what you're doing is would convince people that contract zoning is a good deal. Because I think the argument that I've heard is, well, it gives the select board, it's the perennial, it gives the select board too much power, but it gives them no power. I mean, it's still, contract zoning has to be approved by the town at the town meeting. So there's still that control at the legislative town meeting. So as you're talking to people, that may be something that if you're pro-contract zoning, say, the select board is only gonna make a recommendation. Okay, anything else on contract zoning? Seeing nothing, how about BES, since we're on that duo? I mean, we put a lot of work in on, George, on the BES standards. Are there any, trying to go back and look at what the changes were here.
The only change was that caveat that the standards cannot be reduced unless part of a contract zoning agreement. That was the only change that they made. You had already approved everything else.
Any other just, questions that would help you with your decision or advising people?
Are we in a spot to advise?
Well, we can, I guess a better way to say it is answer
Inform.
questions.
Inform.
Yeah, inform. And you can give me, in my opinion, give me your advice on whether to vote for it or not. Maybe not as a planning board member, but I will certainly give my opinion. That comes as a shock to you, but.
Well, when this, public hearing, we are in a planning board
Yes,
capacity here.
we are,
Right.
much as we've done, in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
But I don't think there's anything wrong with giving your opinion about whether you think it's a good idea or not. And if not, why you don't, or, say, hey, look, down the road, I'd really like it to apply this for other uses, the contract zoning on that one.
It would be better, just organizationally, if the planning board has made a recommendation, you've all voted on that. It probably would be, during the public hearing held by the planning board, it would be better not to inject personal views on it, pro or against, because you've already made the recommendation. Now, when you get on the outside town meeting floor, wherever, that's a different issue.
So
yeah, I agree.
bite your lip and suck it
I
up.
think like what you said, informing, right? Educational, this is what this means.
Yeah,
Is how it should be.
somebody asked, why we should do it, I would say that would be my recommendation.
And again, just not why I think you should do it, these are the arguments for it.
Okay, I guess jump back to resource protection. I think we've put a lot of time in that, so if you get a chance before now in the public hearing to just go back over it.
And I have prepared a slide presentation for all three of these. We'll just run through and give everybody, including yourselves, just a review of what it is and what's involved.
I don't think it hurt. And I would certainly encourage you to encourage your friends to sit at home with their favorite beverage and watch it on TV. So, the advantage of the public hearing is to get the word out, I think, so that people have the, it's an opportunity. So I didn't know, as the one gentleman who came to our meetings, I didn't know anything about this kind of deal. So try to get the word out to those folks. And certainly, there's a lot of that going on with blasts and everything else. Okay, moving back to resource protection. Do we have any questions on resource protection? I mean, I think it's if I remember right, George, they did not, they being the select board, made no changes to what we proposed, so don't need to worry about that. So that jumps us to, the historic, what it still is, but what, the historic district. And so, George, you wanna cover?
Yeah, and you folks have not really been involved in that whole process, so I can just give you an overview of what's involved in it. The town currently has a system that is way beyond what most towns do in terms of historic preservation for towns of this size, and really doesn't fit what you have for historic resources in terms of there are 8 scattered properties where the buildings are either listed on the National Register for historic places or are eligible for listing. You have a historic district that the town attorney has indicated, well, actually, for those 8, there is currently in the ordinance a de facto historic district within a quarter mile of any of those buildings. It never went through the process called for in the Article 12. So she's absolutely clear that that is not legally defensible. To be requiring someone a quarter mile down the road to go through a historic preservation review for a property, it has no impact whatsoever. And the ordinance requires any historic district has to have at least 51% of the people within the district agree to put those regulations on their properties. The only one place where that process has been considered officially is the Southwest Bend Historic District. And the current regulations are really not designed to deal with individual homes. They're designed to deal with districts, like places like downtown Castine, Maine, Kennebunkport, where they have almost every building on the street is a National Register or eligible. Here you've got 3 out of 34 buildings in that entire district have any official designation. So the town attorney is concerned that this doesn't pass muster for a historic district according to the guidelines for establishment of historic districts. So the other problem that I identified 3 years ago is that right now you have 3 competing jurisdictions on these issues. You've got the historic district for the Southwest Bend District. You've got the code officer for all 8 and everything within 1,500 feet. And then the planning board, if a subdivision or a site plan review comes in the historic district, you now have jurisdiction. And over the past 3 years, there's just been constant confusion and many conflicts between these jurisdictions. And so the whole system is just confusing, and it's created a lot of administrative chaos and put burdens on property owners that they're shaking their heads saying, I don't understand why the town is doing this. So the town attorney has reviewed the recommendations that I've made for the past 3 years to streamline the system and bring it into compliance with legal requirements. And so she drafted these regulations and presented them to the select board, which basically would retool and focus most of the stuff into 5.14 and clean it up to follow appropriate standards and give clarity. And then the second part would be to have the Historic District Commission, which is only for the Southwest Bend, make them a town-wide jurisdiction of advisory input, so that the Historic District Commission would no longer act like the planning board in issuing permits. It would have an official advisory capacity. And under the regulations for the 8 properties themselves, any construction, alteration, any project requiring a permit from the code officer would have to get an advisory opinion from the Historic Commission, whether it's in the current district or anywhere in town, and they would have 45 days to advise the code officer whether to issue a permit or not based on the standards in section 5.14, which are the National Interior Department you can't put like a bow window with vinyl siding on the front of a historic building, that type of thing. So they would simply provide the advisory opinion to you if it's a subdivision property involving one of these properties, or the code officer. You would be the code officer, planning board, or the permitting authorities, and the Historic District Commission provides you by a requirement that they provide you with a advisory opinion before any permit can be issued. So that's the basic framework of what is proposed. The select board took the draft that does all that and added one thing, and that is that for any, it retooled and refocused the whole program to be on the 8 properties, not in a district around them or another district, but it was limited to activities and permits on the properties themselves. So concern came up and the select board had a lot of discussion about, well, what if something comes in next to them? And so where they came out with a compromise was to say that if someone's just building a single family next to that historic property, they don't have to go to the Historic District Commission for review of their single family project. If it's a subdivision or a site plan for a commercial building, that will re-trigger the Historic Commission advisory process.
On that note, George, can you tell me where that is in here?
Where that is,
What section?
You're talking about the subdivision in or abutting is on page,
it's on page 150 of the packet.
What section?
It's section 6.21
Okay, the one I'm looking at.
for
Okay.
subdivision,
Yep,
and section 8.6K for site plan.
okay.
I'm sorry, page,
Page 150 of the packet,
yeah,
the highlighted, do you see 2 highlighted paragraphs?
K, we're talking about K?
6.21B, 2, and 8.6K.
So really a site plan review approval, anything that triggers that, which
Or
would not,
like the Wingate subdivision on Royalsboro Road, at that time, one of those abutting properties was thought to be
Mhm.
eligible, it's not.
Mhm.
But, so if that came in and it was eligible, the planning board would have to look at that and mitigate impacts, just like they did.
Yep. But the site plan review is what triggers, like you said,
Or
it's not.
or a subdivision application, that's the first one.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, K, right.
Because, sorry, the subdivision piece of it, it makes sense, 100%, but I guess where am I seeing that? It says, site plan review approval.
Well, subdivision is up above that. If any portion of the subdivision, B2,
Oh, okay, 2,
yeah, is
got it.
in
Yep,
or
okay, so that's the
abutting,
subdivision section.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so if it triggers this, then.
you would have to get an advisory
An
opinion
advisory.
from the Historic District Commission before you can make a decision.
Okay.
And you wouldn't be bound by their advisory opinion.
Mhm. Okay.
But if they made a case that what they were proposing did not meet the standards or would be detrimental to the historic character of the abutting property, and you went forward and granted a subdivision approval, that would basically give an opening for a developer to sue the town to challenge that. Or a abutter who did not want to see the subdivision go in,
Yeah.
whichever way you went.
Okay.
George, one thing I think you could help them with was, it would not be good to have the confusion that was there last night when they started, show me where that is, I can't find that, it seemed like maybe there was 2 different versions of that,
Yes.
so.
And during the day, I had specifically tried to avoid that, but
And I'm not blaming you or
No.
anybody, but that will,
juggling too many balls.
that will turn people off, pretty faster than anything if I've got a different version than you've got.
Oh, yeah.
So, just getting back to that last K that was added per the meeting last night. And I guess if I could just use the example that was thrown around last night, across from there's a proposal for a gas station to go in across the street from an historic property. So so that would be adjacent to,
Correct.
right? So that's when,
Abutting is the legal term.
okay, so then the review would be against the standards here, right?
Correct.
So I just have a comment, is that in the standards, if I wanted to apply these standards to that property that's adjacent to, I'd come to this section C and 2, which lists, height, proportion, blah, blah, blah. There's some text in here, and it sounds like we can't make any changes, but what it says is, all new construction, renovations, or improvements on, connected with, or on the same lot as a historic resource shall be visually related to the historic resource. And then it gets into all of the design issues. So it seems to me that there's a conflict there with or on the same lot as.
Yes and no. Again, the town attorney took these standards, which are right out of the National Interior Department standards. So for whatever litigation there has been in the past on these issues, and there is a lot of litigation, a lot of this is aesthetic, and it's very subjective. So, I mean, the city of Portland right now is in a big brew about the Children's Museum. And
The old one or new one?
the old Children's Museum next to the art museum. And you had I can't remember if it was the city council or the historic district commission were on opposite. One said tear it down, the other one said you cannot tear it down. And it's just so, I attended a training session for this several years ago while trying to help the historic district commission. And these were all of the people in Maine that are dealing with this, and people that have a lot of experience, okay? So the people from the national organization put on this training thing with all of these, quote, experts in the field and the regulatory process. And they gave a case study from a project in Alabama or someplace where they had, somebody was going to do modifications to a historic structure, and they were gonna put up some parapet fencing along the top of an addition that they found pieces of it under the deck or the porch, okay? So they talked to people that had been in lived there in the 1950s, and everybody had them, and they went through this whole process of making the case why they should be able to do this. And at the end of it, as an exercise, they had everybody vote, like you're on the commission. And out of the 75 people, they were evenly split on whether they should be able to do that or not. And it's all subjective. And that's the problem with this, is you're getting into a lot of subjectivity that's laced with subjectivity, but it has been upheld by the courts if you follow the Interior Department standards. So that's why the attorney is being pretty sticky on this to say, yeah, I know that doesn't make a lot of sense in this case, but those are the best standards to apply if you want to accomplish this. So the way this would probably work out is if somebody were going to put a gas station across the street from a historic structure. I don't know if you're familiar with the Freeport McDonald's. I mean, that's been done for 30 years, where you have them modify their design so that it fits better with the historic structure, as opposed to say you can't do it, but you can require modifications. And in that case, they probably see that that's a good way to approach it. And it might require buffering.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's issues with the standards in construction and proportions and heights, just that this says they only apply to something that's on the same lot.
Right.
And K says no, it's going to apply.
Well,
to
it just
the-
says they have to have an advisory opinion. Doesn't say you have to meet the standards, it just says you have to have an advisory opinion. They can review that and make the case to you, putting that gas station with the square box, everything, low budget, slap it in, right across the street from Union Church, is totally incompatible with the abutting property, and they may require them to make modifications.
The only other comment I had is again under C, and again, I understand that we might not be able to change this, but F and G are the exact same, say the exact same thing.
Where are you, Brian? Sorry.
Under
Yeah, rhythm of
C
entrance,
standards,
airport projection.
2, if you go down to under 2, F and G, they're both the same.
What page?
147.
147.
Oh, actually, we did. Those were, that repetition one was deleted, and that's fine to delete. I'm not sure how that got back in here.
I saw reference of comprehensive plan in here. Can you remind me what the comp plan says? Is there anything in addition to historic resources that the comp plan lays out? I think there was something about,
Yeah, the Greater Portland Council of Governments back in 2017, 2016, 17, before the 18 plan, went through and did kind of an inventory of historic properties in Durham. So if something is mentioned in the comprehensive plan, even though it's not been listed or is eligible for listing, then theoretically that would subject it to this.
okay. Okay, yeah, and I saw that just for, if anyone's wondering, that's in the section K. If any portion of the site is in or abutting to a property that has been identified in the comp plan or designated as a historic resource in section 5.14. Okay, thank you.
Brian, what I think happened was somebody, it might have been the select board, picked up on the repetitious rhythm of spacing of buildings or one of those, and it's like we missed the one right beside it that's also repetition, so thank you for picking that
It's
up.
kind of funny that it says rhythm, repetition. Anyways.
Yeah, rhythm is pretty consistent in a few parts.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments, finds? Okay, so we will, just kind of review them beforehand. And when we go through this, we'll do it as we did last year. We'll open it up. Everybody gets, if they have comments, they'll get 3 minutes to make their comments. If there's a lot of people and they get repetition, I will start shutting them down. Quite truthfully, we haven't had a lot of people for anything lately, so I don't know if we will or we won't. But it is a good opportunity to get that word out there. And then the town meeting is the 5th of April. The land use articles are at the very end.
Actually, they've been moved up.
Have they? Oh, well, good.
So we'll talk about them early then.
Yeah,
Well, about
Usually-
midway probably.
people leave, they vote on certain things, now ordinances, half the people have left.
Well, they were like 31, is it?
They get moved up. You've got the budget, and then you've got the land use, or the ordinance articles, and then you've got the business items
Okay.
at the end.
In that case, it's only probably gonna be a couple hours. Last year, we were done in like 2.5 hours, right? I think we finished for whatever reason. So, anything else on land use articles, questions, comments? You can be supportive with your friends, encourage people to come to that. They're on the website. I mean, it's obviously gonna have to make some changes and good catches by everybody. But, get the word out there to people. And I guess our next meeting will be on the 19th there. Any other business?
I'm not gonna be able to make it on the 19th,
Okay.
but then our next meeting's the 2nd, right?
Is that the first Wednesday of April?
Yep.
So the next meeting will be that Wednesday, the 2nd of April. Looks like, I don't know if we'll have Ruby Lane in there. What else is gonna be on the agenda here? So this is an opportunity on television and everything else that I think you all know that, excuse me, Tyler Hutchinson resigned. He just had a lot going on, and he sends his regrets of not being able to stay on. But I would like to thank Tyler personally. Tyler got on the board just before I did. I actually learned a lot, from him. He was a great, for those of you guys who are new and weren't here, he was a great help and always had good comments, plus typed our minutes at the time before George came on full time there. So I wish Tyler well, which means in the future, and which means we have an opening on as an alternate. So if you know folks who might be interested, the alternate is, it would be great if we had somebody who could attend almost all the meetings. The reason for that is that when they then come on and have to vote if we don't have a quorum or whatever, they're prepared. And also, there's a lot of work coming up. There is in the next couple of years. Codification's gonna come along before too long. The comp plan is closing in on its 10-year life, so there will be a lot to do, and the more folks we have that, help out with that, the better, so keep your eyes open for somebody else. If nothing else, George, you have anything else?
Nope.
If
I
not,
move to
nothing.
adjourn.
What's that?
I move to
I'll
adjourn.
second.
Been moved and seconded, any further discussion? If not, please raise a hand. There's never further discussion when we go to do that. We're done. Turn your mics off, please. Thank you for all the hard work. How many people will show up for the public radio?